You've turned on Sexy Marriage Radio, where the best sex happens in the marriage bed. Here's your host, Dr. Corey Allen.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Sexy Marriage Radio, where we're having honest, straightforward conversations about married life and sex and love and the good, the bad, the successes, the failures, all the things that can go wrong and all the things that can go right. We want to cover it all because we believe at Sexy Marriage Radio that married sex is the hot place for sex, and we want it to be all it can be in your marriage. And so once again, we love hearing from the Sexy Marriage Nation, and the way you can let us know what's on your mind or questions that you may have, you can call us 214-702-9565. Or you can send us an email, feedback@sexymarriageradio.com, where all of the information that we get helps shape the conversation. And it even helped create this episode where I'm being joined by a guest that I've just met. We're going to be fast friends, I can tell already.
I can tell too.
This is Lori Watson, is a licensed professional counselor, marriage and family therapist, certified sex therapist. Also the author of a book, Wanting Sex Again, How to Rediscover Your Desire and Heal a Sexless Marriage, and a fellow podcaster with Foreplay Radio. I think that's kind of...
Foreplay Radio Sex
There you go, Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. And so she has a weekly show that is just similar to Sexy Marriage Radio in the sense that it's like free sex therapy in your ears.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So, Lori, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I've given you a little bit. Is there anything else I left out that people need to know about as far as the Sexy Marriage Nation needs to know about you?
Well, I also blog for Psychology Today and WebMD, and you can find us on iTunes for Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. Mm-hmm. So we're everywhere, right?
Right.
Stitcher and
I'll put all the links in the show notes. Yeah, I'll put all the links in the show notes so people can find you very, very easily after this episode.
Good.
So where I want to go with this, because this is something that the Sexy Marriage Nation has emailed a bunch about over the years of Sexy Marriage Radio, and that is the whole idea of desire, when it wanes, when it's good. You know, we don't get as much about when it's good because that's kind of everybody's too busy having sex then, and they're not going to email the show. But it's when it's waning, or when there's trouble, or there's a libido issue. You know, there's so many places we can go with this.
Yes.
And so I guess to start this whole thing off, Lori, is I'm curious, what is it that helped bring about the book that you wrote?
Okay. So I started as a sex therapist because I was really surprised. I taught a premarital class at a big church, and I was surprised that the young couples came back with sexual problems. But what I discovered is the research shows, this is kind of a scary stat, that by 2 years into a commitment or a marriage, that I think it's like 25% plus of couples are sexless.
Okay.
Which means that they are having sex less than 10 times a year or less than once a month.
Right.
Or low sexed, which means less than every other week.
Okay.
And so I really saw this as a need for couples to understand, what happened? Why did desire wane?
Okay. And so I'm curious, what is it that, are there some specific things that have contributed to why things wane like that so quickly?
Yeah. So, I want to talk about all kinds of things. I'm so excited to be here.
Perfect. We'll go wherever you want to go. I'll follow along.
Okay. So, there's some technical things, and there's a relational dynamic that causes it to be problematic. And maybe we could just talk really quickly through some of the technical things because they're a little spicier and fun.
Deal.
First thing, women have called me over and over, and the thing they say on the phone most of the time is, I never want to have sex again. I don't care about it. First thing I check is, do they have orgasms? Because it's such an easy fix.
Yep.
And a lot of women say, I do, but I don't with my partner, or I know how to, or I'm expecting myself to have it during sexual intercourse. and that's not happening. And, so we walk women through how to have an orgasm. First of all, most women do not have orgasms during sexual intercourse.
Right. If it's just
Only
intercourse
15
alone,
to 20%.
correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's really low. And so they get married and they're expecting, that now they should have it that way. Maybe their partner expects that as well due to the porn influence or just lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But actually it takes a woman about 45 minutes, I could say it from soup to nuts,
Okay.
To have an orgasm. So it takes her about 20 minutes to let go of her list
Right.
and sink into the moment.
To transition.
And then it takes about 20 minutes of clitoral stimulation to reach orgasm.
Okay.
And so that's sex or digital manual stimulation, and a lot of couples don't know that.
Yeah.
So as soon as she stops having orgasms, maybe, before they got married, they were putting off the actual act of sexual intercourse. And
Right.
then I know you're a Christian audience, and many of these kids come to see me and they put that off, but they had a lot of foreplay.
They did everything but. Yep, I gotcha.
They did everything but.
Yep.
They didn't cross that line. And then once they cross that line, they think, okay, great, let's have sexual intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not doing the foreplay that actually arouses her. So she's not having orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a girlfriend, this was back when I was getting married, and she married a guy because she was so excited by him. And then 2 years in, I went over to her house and all her negligees were stuffed into her drawer. And I'm like, girl, what happened? And she's like, it's the shower shout out. In the morning, he says, hey, you want some? So she gets in the shower with him and it's a 2-minute quickie.
Right.
Well, a shower is not a great place for a woman to have an orgasm.
Right.
It washes away her lubrication. It's going to be quick.
Yep. It's
so
his focus.
Without orgasm, women don't have.
Yeah, that's that idea of what's in it for them, and if it shifts, because that does create an interesting picture. If you think of the dating scenario, especially the relationships that did everything but, there's tons of petting, if you will, and foreplay. Exactly. Because that's the focus, that's the goal. And then you have all this expectation of intercourse is going to be even more incredible. Yeah. And for the guy, it might be, right? Yes. But for her, I could totally see where she's going to be like, really? What? What just happened?
This was what I was waiting for. And, and I think with spiritual couples and Christians, there's often this disappointment, right? Yep. I waited and put this off. And for the woman who's saying, I don't get anything out of it.
Yep.
And if there's no big bang, there's no big deal.
Right.
And her desire is going to plummet.
Okay.
So orgasm really important. Second issue is going to be pain problems, which, unfortunately happens to women about 10% of the time. And it's not just virgins, although there is pain often if they're virginal. I got to say there's a article on my website, Awakenings, or awakenloveandsex.com. Mm-hmm. And it's basically on first love. So couples who are expecting to have intercourse for the first time, I really want them to read it so that they can have no pain.
Right.
Because a virginal couple, the woman does not have to have pain,
right?
Or minimal.
Right.
But this is beyond that. I mean, there's a lot of couples who struggle with something called vestibulitis, which means she has pain that is unusual at the opening of her vagina, and another condition called vaginismus, which means her vagina contracts,
right,
and really will not allow penetration. So if that happens, I say, get help fast.
Yep, absolutely.
Really problematic. And we see a lot of couples in our practice who are Middle Eastern origin and young Christians who, for whatever reason, they've had misinformation. They've had ideas about what it's going to be like, and they're very fearful.
Right.
And so, that's often a vaginismus condition. And that, of course, lowers libido because the woman is so terrified. And
sure, if you have if you have tons of anxiety or possibility of fear of pain surrounding this event, then if I can't see biologically speaking how the brain's going to go, ooh, let's pump more chemicals out there to make you want this more when,
Exactly.
no, I'm afraid of it.
I'm afraid.
Okay.
Then there's libido. And I think a lot of women say once they get married that, I used to think about and dream about sex. And by the time we got to that petting period, I was lubricated. I was really excited. I want that to happen. And what I tell her is, okay, did you wake up in the morning and think about the date that night? Did you put on something sexy underneath your clothes?
Right.
Did you go out and get a manicure at lunch, getting ready to, prepare for the date?
Yep.
And then you set aside like 6 hours for cocktails and dinner and
Yep.
dancing and how, honestly, Corey, are your married couples setting aside 6 hours for a date?
Not usually. Usually it's how can we squeeze this sucker in amongst everything else we got going on, or after the kids go to bed and before we zonk out because we're so tired.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I say to these women is, okay, you can have that experience any day of the week.
Right.
You got 8 hours?
Right.
Because it's really, she's using her mind.
Yep.
She's projecting ahead into the evening and fantasizing or imagining her connection with her partner.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that often is missing in a marriage when you're picking up the kids, getting the groceries done, not even thinking as a woman, I believe in our culture, that our mind has anything to do with it. We often expect as women that it's the guy who's supposed to turn us on. And that's stereotypical.
Yep.
But a lot of women with low libido have this misinformation, kind of this, are abiding by a myth that she's the object.
Right. And he's not doing it for me. Yeah, he's not doing it for me. So it's his deal, not mine.
Exactly. And I think women don't realize that they have to be the subject sometimes, that they have to own eroticism and desire.
Yep.
And that they have to work at it. I mean, the way it was so natural seemingly when she was dating, now requires some effort.
Okay.
And for men, it requires effort to learn good technique.
Absolutely.
Both of us have tasks. I keep talking over you. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm a talker.
But that's the idea. I guess my question is, for the wife who she doesn't have we can't go backwards and go, oh, I'm just going to recreate all those memories. We could use those as stimuli and maybe sparks, but we can't recreate that whole scene and scenario. It's just an impossibility. But are there some techniques or tips or things that a woman, and even to a degree a man, can do that do help get that framework started and help get some of that process rolling to help set the stage sooner? That's just an individual thing. It's not a relational thing.
Right. So I think women have to first realize that in order to be a fulfilled sexual being, she has to develop what I call as the erotic core.
Okay.
So the erotic core is really about being the subject of your own sexual desire and learning two things: what turns me on in my mind and what turns me on in my body. And she has to be willing to communicate those things.
That's good.
So she has self-discovery, and then she has vulnerability where she talks to her partner about these things.
Okay. That's good. I like that, because the erotic core is the essence of what's going to be a drive wheel for a lot of what can happen in the limitlessness of what your relational sex can be.
That's right.
Okay.
And men, I think, they have, so a normal man, the range for his testosterone is 1,000 nanograms down to 300 nanograms per deciliter. And that's the hormone in his blood.
Right.
Testosterone for men and women governs our sexual drive, our hunger.
Right.
But women, so this is huge, right? Men have like lots of it.
Yep.
And women, we start out with 75.
Right. It's
so
a small dose.
a guy at 300, he has such low libido. He says to me, I don't have erections in the morning. If I have a fight with my wife, I don't want to do it.
Yep.
My erections are failing. Viagra doesn't work. There's all these problems. And then you think about women who start out with this tiny little bit. And by the time she's 40, it's in half. And by the time she's menopausal, it's infinitesimal.
Yep.
So this hormone that we need, it is really not what has ever governed females.
Okay. And that's a good point.
Right. Her mind.
Yep.
And her ability to imagine, to think about sex, to be creative, and to bring that energy is what governs her.
Okay. So
You go.
I do have a question, because what about the wife or the woman that they realize sex is a part of their relationship? They realize it's important, but they really don't have a desire. They're not even interested in if they have an orgasm or not. Yeah. What do we do with those?
Yeah. So we have to find the root of it. Most of the time, I think that libido, it's such a life force. It's such a important part of our soul that when it isn't there, I say it's obscured.
Okay.
That something is blocking it. And so then we have to look deeper. What is the block?
Okay.
And I will say that the number one block comes, and this is why I think couples are sexless. I don't think it has to do with being too busy. I don't think it has to do with having children.
Right.
And I don't think it has to do with aging. It has to do with a dynamic within the coupleship.
Okay.
So the dynamic is that we need two things in life. We need autonomy on one hand, and we need closeness on the other.
Yep.
And so one person is the pursuer and one person is the distancer.
Absolutely.
The pursuer is aware of their need for closeness, talking, connection. The distancing partner often is more aware of their need for purpose, their separateness, doing their own thing. And this struggle becomes really important in the bedroom. In heterosexual couples, often the female is the emotional pursuer and the male kind of backs up. I don't know what she means when she says she needs connection.
Right.
But he is often the sexual pursuer.
Right.
And she's not as interested in bed.
Right.
And so they form this knot. And therapy is designed really to loosen the knot, to learn, to teach each couple, each partner, what are you doing that tightens the knot and how do you loosen it?
That's good.
So because we can't untangle the knot when it's so tight with the tension.
Well, and it's also probably true, because what I know of you just from listening to you thus far, it's also probably that we can't completely get rid of the knot either, because we're not going to totally go through this metamorphosis of being clones of our partner and being exactly in sync, because that's an impossibility. Instead, it's how do I maintain myself, but also still seek that connection in better ways, and don't go to either extreme.
Right. So we need both things,
right.
Like you said.
Absolutely.
We don't want to be subsumed by our partner and lose our identity, but we don't want to be so far away from the fire that the wolves are howling and are going to pick us off.
Exactly. Exactly.
We're too lonely.
Yep. Exactly.
So there's this sweet spot of closeness that's really important. And basically the pursuing partner is often saying, you don't give me enough, and becomes critical,
yep,
angry, controlling. Their inner need is really for connection. What they want is more of the other.
Right.
Whether it be more connection talking or more connection sexually.
Right.
I think one of the blessings that I've had in my life as a female to be a sex therapist, I've heard from thousands of men at this point, and understanding that their need for sex is really the way they feel love.
Right.
I mean, they're not saying I want sex to get off or to just get some. I mean, it's really the way they most deeply feel connection.
Right.
But the distancing partner, it seems like, they feel like no matter what I do, it's not enough for you.
Right.
So if it's a female with low libido, she's exhausted. She's like, you're always coming at me with requests, give it a rest, give it a break, and maybe then I'll get some desire.
Right.
Which he does.
Right.
He tries that.
Right.
He'll try that, and then he comes to me and says, I've given it 3 weeks and she's never initiated.
Yep, exactly.
And it's so frustrating, but that is what I work with every day. And I really think it's a solvable problem.
So I guess let me ask you this. Let's steer it towards, so a wife that's sitting here, all of a sudden now she's listening to this and she thinks, okay, wait, I need to get in touch with my erotic core, right?
Yeah.
I need to recognize that's the identity of who I am. That's a drive force of me. It's what makes me quintessentially human and alive and vibrant. And my hope would be, if she's a member of the Sexy Marriage Nation or Foreplay Radio, Sex Therapy, or anything that anybody that hears this, that she actually, if she's the one that says it's never enough in her dynamic of a marriage, that hopefully she would hear this kind of a message and go, well, of course it's never enough. I mean, look at me. Look at who I am. He could never get enough of this.
Yeah.
And you just all of a sudden switch that whole paradigm to a power stance.
Exactly. I love the way you just said that.
Well, good.
It's seeing behind your partner's nagging or frantic need that actually they want you.
Right.
Instead of feeling like, oh, it's another chore, something else I got to do.
Right.
Something I got to check off my list.
Right. And that's where if you can then steer it towards, all right, I need to make sure that whatever it is that's happening sexual is I'm getting something out of this too. It doesn't just stay in that list or that obligation category, because I could see how that sets up a really devious, destructive pattern, which is how we kind of started the show. Of why would I want something I get nothing out of? Right.
But then in a marriage where we've pledged fidelity, this becomes a dire power struggle.
Absolutely, it does.
Especially if I think in marriage, when her needs are not met, she reduces her vulnerability by losing desire.
Okay.
And men frequently dilute their vulnerability by looking at porn or watching other women, and reassuring themselves, it's out there for me.
Right.
Women just kill it.
Right.
But I think the secret of an enduring marriage that is alive and vital, like you said, is being alive, emotionally connected, and also sexually connected. And that both parts are really important.
Well, that's what separates that relationship from everything else, hopefully.
Yes.
You're not sharing that with everybody if you're in at least a monogamous committed relationship. Okay, so what are some of, as we kind of start wrapping this up, what would be, are there some things that people maybe don't even realize are getting in their way that they just haven't even thought of as, okay, hold on. Because to me, the takeaway for me right now is the erotic core. That's to the bank, hook, done. That's perfect. That there needs to be a lot more on that with people.
I agree.
And
we need to have a blog post on that.
Absolutely. Well, send me the link when it goes live. Absolutely. But what else could be there that people don't even realize? Because I like how you framed this with, it's not because we're too busy, or it's not because we're just tired, or it's not because maybe my libido, biologically speaking, isn't what it once was, because we're discounting the power of the mind and we're discounting the power of the relationship. But
and you know what I know that it's not about time, money, or anything else, is because I sit with couples. They make it to my office one day a week for an hour. They pay for it. So I know that they can coordinate their lives to get an hour alone together.
Absolutely.
So I know it's not about time and money and tiredness. They can get to my office. They can do it.
Okay.
Many times I think if you would just spend that money and go to a hotel room, you might in my office.
I've actually given a couple that they had come to me several times, and after like 2 or 3, I'm kind of realizing you guys are getting more out of the fact that you've just carved time together than you are
Yeah.
paying me. Why don't you spend the money you would have paid me and go to a nice dinner instead?
Right.
And they were like, we can do that. Absolutely. Consider it therapy. I mean, if you want to pay me and then go to dinner, I'll take it. I feel kind of unethical about that, but that's a better thing.
But we are talking about functional people who
Yes.
really can take our advice.
Yes.
But people who don't come from childhoods where that's modeled and intimacy is not
Right.
part of what they've seen in childhood, they have deeper attachment issues. And that's when they become more and more spread out
Right.
in terms of pursuer, distancer, and they don't know how to get out of it. So that really is a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where they benefit from somebody that really does help walk them through it, and as you've mentioned and framed, loosen the power on that knot, loosen the tension,
Exactly.
so they can start to look at it through a better lens. Okay, so any other things where we get in our own way that we're not even aware of?
Yeah. So I think that, just a couple of other thoughts is a lot of young mommies, are exhausted and overwhelmed. And one tip I would give them is do this. Go rent a hotel room, hire a babysitter, and have that babysitter come over at like 3:00. You go to the hotel room and take a very long bath and a very long nap.
Okay.
And then get dolled up
Mm-hmm.
and meet your husband downstairs for drinks and appetizers. Right. And
Yep.
he's ready, the babysitter's at home, and then go upstairs to your room, have wild sex, send him home, get a good night's sleep.
I love it.
And then he takes care of the children until noon. I have never had a woman say, I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, they've all said, oh my gosh, I would be so up for
that
wild
is
sex.
fantastic advice. That is so great. I love it. I can't think of a better way to end a show than that right there. So, Lori, tell people how they can find you.
Okay, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, you can find us on iTunes and Stitcher for Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy.
Yep.
And you can find us, let's see, my book is Wanting Sex Again. It's on Amazon. It's about how to really help women with low libido. Every chapter is fun. It's the way I like to read books, a case study and something interesting about a couple. That would be helpful.
That's good.
I'm on Psychology Today and WebMD. You can, we do Skype therapy, so you can find me at awakenloveandsex.com.
Perfect.
So I help all over the nation.
And I will have all that information in the show notes at sexymarriage.net. So, Lori, I got to say thank you for helping us walk through this. And man, you brought it, girl. Thank you. That was great.
You're welcome. This was fun.
Good. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, this has been Sexy Marriage Radio. If we left something undone, let us know. Feedback at sexymarriageradio.com. So wherever you are, whatever you've been doing, thanks for taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. See you next time.